Mind Your Farm Business on realagriculture.com is brought to you by RBC Royal Bank.
Welcome to the latest episode of Mind Your Farm Business on realagriculture.com, brought to you by RBC. I'm Sean Haney. Glad you could be with us today. Today we're going to focus on somebody that has a real special role in the family farm. But first I got to ask you, is there anything more important than family? This is a very simple question that comes with very complex answers. Of course, family is critical for many reasons. Family can also cause heartbreak, friction, and anger as well. Today on Mind Your Farm Business, we're going to talk to Elaine Froese, and we're going to discuss a very important person in the family farm unit. Today's focus is going to be on the daughter or the son-in-law that marries into the family farm. Now, whether this person works off farm or works in the family farm business, they hold a very, very critical role. This new person to the family farm holds special responsibility and can either be the glue or the dynamite to the family farm. As the new member of the family, there are expectations put on this person to follow the family norms and traditions. At the same time, there's a new family being constructed, and they must establish themselves while surviving in the larger family farm unit. I told you this was a very complex situation. Let's talk to Elaine and find out more. Why is this son or daughter-in-law that's being added to the family and being added to the business, why is this such a critical component to farm relationship success?
You're bringing someone new into the family dynamic who has fresh eyes and has a new perspective, and whether that's the son-in-law or the daughter-in-law, they come with a different way of doing conflict, a different way of communicating, different maybe values that you haven't totally explored yet. And so it's really critical for families to understand that there's two systems in place when you're minding your farm business. There's the farm business, which, guys that are pretty keen on the operational side and strategic side about, this is the job that we need to do to run a successful farm. But the other system that's always interlooped and in place and connected to that farm business is the family system. And I come from a home ec background and certified coaching degree or a certification with the Hudson Institute and my conflict training. And it's just people's eyes start widening when I have a red circle for the family and a green circle for the farm. And then I put these two circles together that are baby toddler links that I use as a prop. And I just say, you have to recognize that there's more than one system happening here. And I think people forget just basic things that they need to remember when they're trying to put something new into any system.
Well, and a lot of you that are probably listening to this can think of a neighbor that's had a tragic, a bad example. And maybe some of you are listening are saying, oh boy, if I could only share my experience. But let's talk about the good situation. So in the research that you've done and the families that you've met with and talked to, is there a trend or are there some key characteristics of that in-law factor where it works and it can be a success? Right.
We deal with that quite succinctly. And one of the first ones is having a voice, that everybody is allowed to communicate freely and openly and feels that they have a voice. Another one is love and respect, that everyone is kind and gracious towards each other and respects the other people involved in the family and in the business. And then acceptance of people's identity. And one of the things that's interesting, Sean, at the Farm Management Canada conference last year, I was following the Twitter feed about a conversation, what we wish our parents understood by the young farmers. And something popped out that I'd never seen before. And one of the items was, maybe our spouse isn't as passionate about the farm as we are, and that's okay. So we all know and recognize where a new person comes into the farm dynamic and adds energy and strength and excitement to the business. But we also know other cases where a spouse comes into a farming scenario and doesn't wish to participate at all. And so it's the ability to have clear expectations with roles and what the expectations are of each family member and whether or not they're meeting up to those roles or not. Another thing would be financial compensation. Are people compensated fairly for the work that they're doing? Because, of course, finance has become another huge area of conflict. And then what's the code of conduct for the family? Like, strong families communicate well, they celebrate, and they connect. And strong families do not gossip.
Okay, so let's go through a scenario here, because I got a question for you based on what you just said. Okay. So the daughter of the family marries a guy named George, okay? Mm-hmm. And George, let's say it doesn't matter whether he's maybe he's a lawyer, maybe he wants to work on the farm, it doesn't really matter, but he's marrying into this family. Mm-hmm. Who has more work ahead of them in terms of building that respect? Is it George, or is it the parents of the daughter?
So who has more work in terms of building the respect? Is it the parents or the daughter? And I would say it's both, because I don't know if George, as a lawyer, wants to become involved, because I have tons of professionals like engineers and accountants who've come back to farm full time. And then I have people who are more the silent partner. So I think it's both. I don't think it's either or. So in order for people, it's all about I have 3 C's. So my 3 C's are the clarity of expectations, the certainties of timelines and agreements, and a commitment to act. And so when George comes into this family, is he going to continue being a lawyer? Right, fine. And his spouse, the daughter, is going to be actively farming with her parents. But the parents also, I think, at some point want to know, George, do you think you're going to keep your career till you're 45 or 50? And then do you think you'd like to have a second career in agriculture? So there's lots of different conversations around expectation that need to happen. And the thing for parents is they have certain set things of expectations of how they thought their life might be. And some people don't deal very well with change, Sean. So maybe their daughter marries somebody totally not what their ideal was for their scenario. Well, they just have to learn to let that go and create a new scenario. But a lot of people aren't happy with doing that kind of scenario building.
Well, you just touched on a very, very, I think it's common, is where the family farm business unit is going to change. Someone's marrying into the family. It becomes a very easy scenario for mom and dad to say, that person's not good enough for our son or daughter, and thinking of it more from a business aspect than the happiness of their kid. Do you agree with that?
Well, and I always tell people, once your child gets married, you no longer have a choice to curse. It's all about blessing. And when you mention that thing, good enough. When I speak to farm audiences, I can have 200 people at the same time chime in to the end of this sentence. No matter what you do on this farm, it's never. And then they all say in unison, Elaine, it's never good enough. I go, who told you that? Where did you get that? And so, unreasonable expectations are really threatening the success of the farm business going forward. And so, what is good enough? And then the other piece is people, as the founding parents, they're aging, they're not facing their decline very well. And they have to look at the skill sets being brought to the farm by family members or by non-family members. So I've got all kinds of warning signs that we can talk about, and one of them is judgment, is not being good enough, or being highly critical, or holding a grudge. And I mentioned gossip earlier, like not being able to voice your perspective or your opinion directly to the person that you need to voice it to, and that becomes then what we call in conflict resolution triangulation, where you have, go tell your father I'm mad at him. No, you go tell him yourself, because you two are grown-ups and you're adult business partners, and you need to talk directly to each other. And that's where the son-in-law or daughter-in-law gets stuck, and particularly for son-in-laws, they want to, if they're going to be working on the farm, they are the son-in-law, yes, but at some point they are also going to change roles from going from an employee to a possible potential shareholder, which is a huge shift in management and ownership, right?
Yeah, and
so their roles are going to change.
And it gets down to the respect factor, right? Because it's very easy for people to have the attitude of, listen, I've been living on this farm for 45 years. You've been here for 5. How about you just find your place and just enjoy it?
That's the your way or the highway culture that doesn't work. But Sean, I was traveling in the States this summer and we got pulled over on the interstate in a rainstorm behind this semi-truck. And the back of the semi-truck, there was a sign that said, "My way is the highway." I just killed myself laughing.
Yeah. Well,
because semi-truck drivers are the only ones allowed to have that sign.
Yeah, and I don't mean the intention here is not to demonize the parents because there are a lot of good situations out there where honestly I think the parents are excited about the in-law that's coming into the family because they add value and they add skills and they add a diversity that really the farm didn't have before. So I think we need to be thankful. It's easy to go to the bad situations. We all have those scenarios that we've either experienced personally or we've witnessed as a friend with a neighbor, right? Let's talk a little bit about this person though that's caught in the middle, right? And that is the son or the daughter that grew up in this family that has found a new loved one and has gotten married and has brought them maybe into the business or at least into the family unit. They can be caught in the middle. And for a lot of our listeners, I'm sure they've had the discussion with their spouse. Oh, can you please just get along with my mother? You know, what does this person in the middle do? And how do they kind of ensure success managing these two relationships of spouse and with parents?
So very, very good question. And I gleaned a lot from the work of John Gottman, who wrote the book, 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. And I'm just reading his other one called Why Marriages Succeed or Fail. And one of the things he talks about is making quick repair. So I'm very strong around most families say, Elaine, we just need to communicate better. So when you communicate better, does that mean you have the ability, with respect, to stand up and ask for what you need? And you know, just get along with my mom, or can't we just pretend this isn't happening, or just ignore this? Well, no, it's because all of us have basic needs that need to be accepted and validated. So my encouragement to that spouse who's caught in the middle is, what are you doing as a couple in your marriage to make your conflict resolution stronger and your communication stronger, so that when you share your intent, my intent is not to aggravate you, my intent is not to cause harm. My intent, Mom, is to let you know that the habits you have are not being helpful for creating unity in this family business. And we need to talk about things that need to change. And so you don't avoid the conflict and you don't try and smooth things over, but you actually do what I call discuss the undiscussable. You deal with the bull in the middle of the room and you talk about it. What is it that is working for you in my habits and how we relate to each other? And secondly, what's not working? What would you like me to do differently? So then you become vulnerable. And I don't know if you're familiar also, Sean, with the work of Brené Brown, but she's just wrote a really good book called Rising Strong, and she's done a wonderful TED Talk on the gifts of imperfection and being enough. And for farm families, you know, the ability to be vulnerable and say, you know what, I'm aging, I'm not so good at this anymore, I'm afraid, or whatever it is that's going on for you. When you can have that kind of real courageous conversation with your in-laws and say, what is working and what would you like me to do differently, then I think you can make progress for the farm to be a lot stronger.
Okay, hold on here 1 second. I was checking on something. I lost my chain of thought. I was checking on your book. Hold on 1 second.
Yeah. Okay.
It's very good, by the way.
You're talking about people being caught in the middle and loyalty being questioned. How do you avoid that predicament?
Yeah. Oh, I know. Okay. Sorry, I just got to go in order.
Okay.
So Elaine, we've kind of given some people a base to kind of get started. Now, some may be saying, oh, Elaine, that's all great. Yeah, communicate better, respect, all of that is really fluffy, nice stuff. But when the saying goes, when something hits the fan, sometimes those things get thrown out the window, and that's not reality. So what do you say to that?
Well, there's also a need sometimes, Sean, for what Dr. Henry Cloud calls necessary endings. And I've done a webinar on farm transition when you do have to leave, and that's not something that we want to promote necessarily, but it's also our current reality for families when no matter how much intervention by outside professionals, counseling, coaching, conflict resolution, sitting down with the accountant, the lawyer, whatever, no matter what they do, nothing ever seems to shift. And they get this totally hopeless feeling. Then they have to say, you know what? Life's too short to be miserable, and that we need to make a necessary ending. And rather than the marriage ending, they decide to preserve family and cut their ties on the business system side and go and do something else. So I see that. I actually am a permission giver as a coach, because I think I've coached over 600 families in the last 13 years, and just at varying levels of depth, of course. But, I've seen lots of different scenarios where one family, a couple that we wrote about in the book, terrible situation, feeling beholden to the parents, had to beg to get paid, lots of financial struggle. I said, what are your options? She said, well, we could actually move 2 hours away and go work for my parents, and I could have my off-farm job and make a decent income. And I said, and why are you still there? And I just asked her that one question, and they left. And now they're much happier because they were in a situation that what they felt, no matter what they tried to do to have repair and make things better, it wasn't going to work. And so sometimes we have to accept that things aren't going to work, and we have to let them go.
Well, you mentioned communicating better, and I thought right away of our mutual friend Bob Parker, and I've heard Bob say before in his seminars where he says, having the goal of communicating better is really an empty sort of promise, because what does that actually mean? And be detailed in the fact that, okay, in order to communicate better as a family unit, which involves the in-law, here's the things that we are going to do, and here's how we're going to resolve any sort of conflict before the conflict even happens, to ensure that we have at least a process in place.
Exactly. And that's, in the Managing Generations book from Farm Management Canada, they call that the code of conduct. So what is our code of conduct here for conflict? And also then Dr. Cole's work from Virginia Tech that was studied that, the families that can meet regularly and communicate in a formalized way through a family business meeting are 21% more profitable. It's probably the only stat that I have to back up the work that I do, because people say, well, Elaine, this is all touchy-feely. I go, no, it isn't. It's practical tools towards getting clarity of expectation, certainty of timelines and agreement, and a commitment to act. Because a lot of young farmers say, Elaine, being on this farm is like being in a conversation that never ends, which means it's not resolved. And conflict resolution, in my world, is a business risk management strategy, Sean. So better communication, I agree totally with Bob. What does that mean, and how do you actually do it? And for me, that means giving farm families language around sharing their intent and knowing what effect that has on other people, giving them language around what's the common interest here. We want a happy family, yeah, but we're not happy because people are avoiding talking about what needs to be talked about. So maybe you need an outside facilitator like a coach or an accountant or lawyer or a counselor or somebody who's skilled at holding that family in a safe place, so that they can say what needs to be said and then build on the positive and move forward. But everybody gets to choose every morning. Marilee Adams wrote a book called Change Your Questions, Change Your Life. She says, when you wake up in the morning, you get to choose whether you're going to be a learner or whether you're going to be a judger. And as a learner in a farm family business, when you're minding your farm business, you think about, what is my mindset? Am I going to learn from this? And what am I responsible for? Rather than judging and pulling people down into, contempt and criticism and complaining and into that pit of negativity, which just spirals nowhere and gets everybody stuck.
Yeah, I find a lot of times with our audience and just people, I think it's a natural tendency, is that people are like, well, to be honest with you, my spouse and parents get along great.
Yeah.
This doesn't affect me. And so I wanted to wrap up here by asking you, or even though things may be going along famously, are you ever really out of that danger zone where you can afford to stop making sure the relationships in this family farm unit, including the in-law, work?
I think it's an ongoing basis. I think Helen Keller said life is a daring adventure or nothing at all. And there's going to be bumps in the road, Sean. There's mental health issues that I would like to do more writing about in terms of what I see happening in agriculture with the stress and the new study that's just come out on that. And so things can change for people. There's accidents, there's loss, there's grief, there's bumps along the road. So I think if you have your toolkit of communication, of clarity, of love and respect and acceptance, and you're strong in your identity and your expectations and the roles that you play in your farm business, if you keep yourself strong and resilient and always have that learner mindset of being aware of what's going on around you and being open to caring and making that quick repair, then I think you're on a path where you'll be pretty resilient no matter what, those bumps and curves that come.
As you heard from my conversation with Elaine, the person that marries into the family farm, better known as the daughter or son-in-law, really has the opportunity to contribute to the success of the family farm, whether they work on the farm or not. The results do not fall completely on the shoulders of this person, though. It takes the entire family to make a family farm business succeed. The in-law is just a very important component of that potential success. I want to thank you for enjoying this episode of Mind Your Farm Business, brought to you by RBC, and we look forward to next time on Mind Your Farm Business.